So, Miss Kinlaw, how are you feeling right about now? About 1 centimeters dilated, couple contractions, damn near threw up on yourself, almost passed out. So far, so good. My birthday, by the way.
17. Jaden Jaden was conceived by mistake. Like, end of story. Like, I love my child to death, and I always pray for a child. Like, so don't get me wrong with that. I love her, but it wasn't supposed to be with her because we got to the point where it was. I didn't like him no more. Like, I hated him. Like, I hated him. It was a love-hate relationship. Like, I hated him. I wanted him gone, but I didn't want him gone because I was so used to him being there. So it's like we were mentally abusive to each other, physically abusive to each other. But every time I tried to leave, he would box me in a corner. And the more he boxed me in, the worse it got. So now we like fist fighting. Is verbal abuse. Like, I'm calling you. I'm hitting low blows. Like, your mother gonna die type shit, bitch. Like, you ain't gonna never be shit, like, type stuff like that. It was getting bad, and I didn't want to be that person. So it was just like I knew I should have been called it quits. Got drunk one night, went to a gay bar with the girls, my sisters and my cousin. We had a ball. Got back in. Rihanna was alright. So fast forward, I found out that I was pregnant with Jaden around like 3 weeks, and I told my mother, and her reaction was the worst. Like, I begged you not to have a baby by him, boo 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 type. Like, I'm not the grandmother type shit. So I'm just like, okay, like, I don't really want to hear this my entire pregnancy, so I'm gonna just stay in this zone and hopefully we can be happy in our own little bubble. But we was like cool for a minute, but my mother just like start flooding us with stuff. So before we can start buying anything for the baby, like, it was a closet full of clothes. Everything that we could think about was already bought. Like, it was a shelf full of Pampers, like sizes 0, 1, all of that. So, yeah, it was like really nothing left for us to do. So by the time they want to plan a baby shower, I didn't really want to have a baby shower because we had everything that we needed. It was really, I want to buy some stuff too. It was really nothing left for us to do. Like, I wanted to take some time to do that. We fussed about that. We fussed during the baby registry. Like, it was just the worst. So fast forward, Jaden's here, and now we're fussing about visitation because it got to the point where we couldn't live under the same roof. We couldn't live under the same roof or whatever. So, okay, cool. But Jaden was born in January, and I'm not gonna lie, I was that new mom because it's like I got my mother whispering in my ear like, oh, she shouldn't be going outside. Oh, she shouldn't be doing this, or she need to be wearing this, she need to be wearing that. So I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't feel comfortable with her going outside, in and out. So I'm like, y'all can come over whenever. Just let me know when y'all on your way. We'll be in the house. Cool. But they didn't like that. They wanted her to physically come outside and go back and forth, like, throughout the days. So every other day type. And I'm like, well, that's a lot. So we ended up beefing back and forth about that. And eventually, he came to pick Jaden up one day, and he like, oh, well, it's my day to have her. But she was getting shots that day. The last time we went to the doctors, he like showed his ass, like, well, I want her to go with me so my family can see her. And we literally like physically pulling on her in the doctor's office. And I'm just like, are you serious right now? So I didn't tell him that she was going to the doctor's this time. So I'm like, okay, well, she just got something to do this morning, and you can come pick her up from daycare. He pulled up to my house like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. I'm taking her with me. It's my day. And I'm just like, okay, well, not right now. He like, she a baby. What a baby got to do? And it's like, I didn't want to explain because I didn't want him going to the doctors with me. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I'm sorry. So we literally are physically fighting in the hallway with the baby in my arms, like fist fighting, like tugging. He pulling on the baby legs, and she was already. Jaden was born 5 pounds. She came home 4 pounds. So I'm, she was already tiny, and I'm like panicking. So okay, I call the police, and I'm like, okay, well, we gotta figure something out. And he calls the police because I called the police. So when the police pull up, it's like 2 police that's pulling up to the situation, and they ended up ruling in my verdict, and we left. They made me fill out a statement because he was showing his ass. Like, it was so much rebuttal or whatever, and they trying to figure out what happened. He want to press charges, then he don't want to press charges. Then he like, well, they need to get me and say something to me type. So they like, fuck it, make a statement. I made a statement, cool. I made a statement so that we can leave. Then, let's say, fast forward, this happened in March. A couple months later, I get served papers. And they served me these papers at a daycare where I was working at with Jaden. Embarrassing. So I get the paperwork and I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. And one thing leads to another, and he really is going into detail in his paperwork. So fast forward, we end up going to court. After that, we get restraining orders against each other. And then by August, we have our final court custody ruling. The custody ruling was that Jaden stayed with me primarily, and he got her every other weekend type thing or whatever. And once a week, he got her on the day, which originally was his days off. But after court, we went down the line, and that wasn't good enough for him. So then it's, oh, I want more days. And because I didn't want to fuss, it's like, okay, cool, let's just negotiate the days. My biggest thing was time, because I'm already dividing my time between him and my mother. Mm-hmm. And my mother damn near, like, Jaden barely stayed with me. Like, I barely got a chance to see her. And the most I saw her was when I'm working with her at daycare. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm like literally clinging to every moment. And he like fighting me on everything. So it's like I'm fighting with her, I'm fighting with him. And it was already overwhelming. I didn't even have a chance to get through postpartum. I didn't know if I was going through postpartum. Well, I'm just going to like fall. Like, so I'm catching a bus with Jaden. My car went up. And I was fine with that. But then it came with, okay, he wanted to pick Jaden up whenever. We got a strict cutoff time. And I tried to like get my little bit of time in there. So I'm trying to squeeze in, okay, you can start picking them up at like 2, 3 o'clock when the regular kids get picked up from daycare, which was fine, but that wasn't cool with him. So he want to pick her up early in the morning as soon as she get to daycare type. She need to be ready. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. Gave into that. So now we fussing because he not paying the child support he's supposed to be paying. Now, I'm not really tripping about the money. I'm tripping because I need to know so that I can make the arrangements that I need to make. I have the apartment. I have my car insurance. I have, like, all of the stuff that I'm responsible for, and he still live with him with his mother. So I'm not thinking it's really that big of a deal. And you knew what the arrangement was at court. The judge said what she said. And I'm really not trying to bitch about it. It's just, are you going to have it? I'm doing that, then he making me seem like I'm being a bitch. So that was a problem. Then it was the day of, oh, it's not your money, it's for the baby anyway, yada, yada, yada. So now we beefing about that. But I had already made arrangements to pay the bills with this money. But he never saw that, so we beefing about it. Okay, whatever. Fast forward, now 2018, I get served more paperwork saying that he want to go to court for full custody and that I was an unfit parent. Mind-boggling to me because I thought we were getting to the point where we was cool. Like, we made it to, we went to Ocean City for 4th of July with the baby. It was cool. I included him in the Christmas pictures that I paid for. That was cool. I made sure that they got pictures. They was invited to everything. So I'm thinking that we're good. Then I get this paperwork because I'm saying that I don't want to deal with him on a physical level. Okay, cool. So I don't think we ended up going all the way through with that court case. That ended up flopping through. Then we go to 2019 where stuff was cool. But randomly, I'm at work and I get a text message saying that Jaden was terminated effective immediately from daycare. Mind-boggling to me. I didn't get this text message from the daycare provider. I got this text message from his mother, which was like kind of weird to me. So when I called the daycare lady, she was kind of pissed because I had a conversation with his mother saying that I didn't want to pay her in cash. I would rather not. If I'm going to pay cash, this was my exact words. If I'm going to pay cash for Jaden to go to daycare, then I'm going to put her in an actual like preschool like that I'm going to have to pay for. Which made sense to me because that's my preference and that's in the best interest of the child. Nor did I think that this conversation would go back to the daycare provider. But I guess it did, so that was that, and Jaden was terminated effective immediately. So I tried to include him in finding other places. I'm taking off for work, which I really couldn't afford to do. Taking off for work, catching a bus, trying to find places to go to, and his excuse every time that I went somewhere was, oh, I can't get there in time, and mind you, I'm catching a bus. I don't have no way there. okay, fine. So I did it by myself, and I just made sure that I shot him a message to let him know what places I was looking at and where I was leaning towards. My mother ended up helping me find a spot, which was perfect. They wore uniform, you know, it was like separated by grades. It was cool, especially for it to be like a daycare. It was more like a little preschool. That was fine, but they ended up shutting down around COVID time. We had already discussed in 2018-ish that I would move to Atlanta because I visited and I fell in love with it. So I'm like, cool. So I'm trying to talk him into moving to Virginia, which is closer to Atlanta, and he needed to get away from his mother because there was a lot of toxic stuff going on there. And I felt like in order for him to really reach his full potential, which he is aware of because we had this conversation plenty of times, he needed to get away from her because she enabled him in a lot of stuff that he did. Cool. Fine. So around March-ish of 2020, I want to say. Is that around COVID time? I think. So around that time, everything was fine to my knowledge. We was just talking. I had asked him specifically, oh, this is why we fell out. I asked him specifically about dating. We was all talking about our dating life or whatever. I tell him everything because literally he was like my best friend. I really don't have friends. And because we was together for so long, it wasn't nothing sexual. Like I really didn't have sex with him since Jaden was like the first year type shit. So it wasn't nothing sexual, but he was my best friend. So I'm calling him and I'm telling him all my business. I literally called him crying about this one guy who did me dirty. Like my heart was broke. So we had this conversation like, you talking to anybody? You see anybody, any potential of anybody being around the baby? And he told me no. And I'm like, the same thing for me. But if anything happens, I definitely let you know. So I'm thinking it's vice versa. So I went to get the baby from daycare because and when I went to pick her up, the teacher like, oh, she was fighting, which never happens, right? Jaden is a sweetheart. So that like was new to me. But they was fighting at his mother's house. And they like literally was fighting on him. And I had said something to them about that. So I'm thinking, okay, cool. So when I left the daycare and they told me that, I called him. He didn't answer the phone, so I put them in a group message to like tone it down on the fighting. And if they needed me to text message, then my mother and them ended up calling. So when they they normally call after her school day to check in and see how she did or whatever. And most of the time, that's pretty much when they kidnap her after that. So they called and they checked in or whatever, and I'm letting them know that she had just gotten in trouble for fighting. So they fussing and they chewing her out or whatever, making her feel bad. And I had already like chewed her out and made her feel bad. So after that, you know, they get off the phone, and a few minutes later, her father called. And I'm like, okay, well, I answered the phone, and I'm like, well, not right now. You know, we about to go to the market. I'll let you call when we come back because I didn't want to bash her. So I'm like, not too much at once. So he like, you telling me I can't speak to my child? And I'm like, I'm saying not too much at once. So he said something again, and then like I got bucked. Like, okay, not right now. Like, I said what I said. All right, bet. So I boofed, and I ended up, when we got back in the house, I put the groceries away. I let her call him back. So they on the phone, and he like, what happened at school today? And she like, I was fighting, and like making a joke about it. And he like, you was fighting, and that pretty much was the end of the conversation. So she like, something, where's Cece at? Or something like that. So I'm like, well, who's Cece? Cece, and she named like a baby. And I'm like, okay, well, who are these people, kind of thing. So I'm like lost in the sauce. But when I asked, it's like everybody froze. Like, it was caught. So I'm like, okay, now I'm really curious, like, as to who she could be. Because we had just had this conversation, so I know it's not like, you know, a girl, right? So everybody quiet, and now I'm getting irritated. So I'm like, okay, well, who is Cece? So Jaden looking crazy, and he's like flat silent. But then I see him like whisper on, cause he on FaceTime. So he like turn to the side and he like whisper something and get to laughing. So now I'm like real pissed off. So I'm like, who the F is Cece? Like, who is it? So I'm like, now you playing with me, and we supposed to be cool. So I'm trying to make this, you know, two-way relationship, but now you playing in my face. So now I felt completely played, and I did, like, maybe I overreacted or whatever. But I'm just like, okay, I'm cutting my ties. Like, I'm done with this. I'm tired of trying, and it's just backfiring on me. So a few minutes later, I was going to Mardi Gras. So we agreed that he would take her for the week, which was normally my week, and I would take her for his weekend because that would be the last time that I'm in town. So that weekend was supposed to be mine. Mind you, we having this argument on Friday night. So now you're making me weird. What you doing? What you looking at? Okay, sorry. Wait, no, now we gotta stop going on this rage. So I ended up hanging up the phone because I noticed that I was scaring Jaden. So I'm like, all right, cool, let me calm down. So I hangs up the phone and I'm like, my mother and them called back again. They checking in on Jaden. So I'm telling my mother what's going on, and I ended up having to calm myself down again because she was getting hyped and I was getting hyped. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm calming myself down, and next thing you know, I get a knock at the door. So I'm like, Ma, he's at my door. And she like, no, he not, but boom. So I'm like, a knock again. So I'm like, he's outside. So at this point, I'm already on 10, and I told him that the next time he see me, he gonna see me. So when I opened the door, I waited for him to put his toe through that threshold, and I already had like the broomstick in my hand, so I whacked his ass when he came in. Mind you, Jaden is in the tub doing all this, so we like get the fighting. We like really like fighting. So he brought his homeboy along the way with him, and his homeboy like standing in the way, and he like, why you being a bitch? Like just let him get his daughter, boo boo. So he making it seem like on the outside looking in that I'm just keeping the baby from him type shit. So now it's this whole war because now it seems like I'm keeping her from him because he got a girlfriend. Okay, fine. So, okay, whatever. He ends up calling the police. I called my mother and them because I needed somebody to come and get Jaden so I can calm down because I was done with the situation. And at this point, I really don't care what the consequences are because it was just irritating that we keep going back in this circle. And I'm over it. Like, because we was just talking earlier that day. You feel me? So I just don't understand where any of this is coming from. So we like really like, I'm over it. So I'm carrying on in front of the police. I'm literally, at this point, I'm hiding in the closet because I don't know how I'm gonna react. And the police asking me stuff, and it's pissing me the fuck off because you asking me all these questions, but you in my house. You not asking me how the fuck he get to my house. You not asking me none of this. You asking me about assault. Yes, the fuck I did. Yes, I did. I did whatever you said I did because why he was in my motherfucking house. If you gonna ask me anything, ask me why he was in my house. It's like they was not, that part wasn't clicking. So they like really like attacking me, and it's supposed to be my weekend. It's supposed to be the time that I get to spend with my child before I leave. So it blew me. So he ended up taking her. The police ended up going with her, or going in his favor. He ended up taking her, and that's what it was. So I just ended up packing my stuff, went to my flight or whatever, and I ended up going to my sister's house. I got like a toe contusion and some more shit. Like, so I got a little boot on my foot when I went to New Orleans. So that was funny. But yeah, so after that I came back, and that's when all the court shit broke out, and it became a thing as to, it's putting a halt on the move to Atlanta. Because now he's saying that he want full custody of Jaden because I'm moving to Atlanta because he got a girlfriend. So it's basically making it seem like a out of spite thing, and it's his word versus my word. And because I get so hyped trying to present the situation, it makes it hard for me to represent myself because he keep pulling the I'm aggressive card. But he don't, like, nobody sees the fact that he like keep pushing, and it's causing me to react. And only thing that people was catching is this reaction part. So I automatically look like I don't know how to handle myself, or I'm overly aggressive, or whatever the case may be. I'm automatically irrational. So if they see me that way, the court see me this way, my family see me this way, it got to the point where I'm like, okay, well maybe I'm just this way, and I can't fight it no more. You feel me? Like, enough was enough, and I wasn't gonna let nothing put me in the way of. I felt like I was supposed to be in Atlanta. And I still feel like that to this day, so that's where I'm at. And I'm finally to the point where I feel like I'm starting to be able to breathe, and like, I guess I'm gonna dive back into the situation and really put the pieces of the puzzle together, because I do miss my child. Like, it's not a day that I wake up and I don't think about my daughter, or I don't talk about my daughter, or, you know, I'm not moving for her. Like, even in the fun that I'm having, I feel guilty for having it because I don't have my child. And I know that she's still fighting what she's fighting, even though, and like with me fighting what I'm fighting. It's not just me. And I understand that, and I'm not doing it intentionally for her. But I feel like overall, if I can't be my best self for her, then what am I giving her? What am I showing her? And I don't want to be in a position where I'm settling no more, or I'm struggling no more, or people got access to keep taking from me, because I'm not going to have nothing else to give her. And I was completely defeated, and I just couldn't breathe. So I mean, and that's just my side of it. I can't really speak too much on how everybody else see it, because to me that's what it is. I'm never putting her on the back burner. It's always like since the moment she was conceived, since before her, I prayed for her. So I'm not ever gonna make a move to put her in any harm or none of that. Like, that's just what it is.
Why are you taking your socks off?
I'm taking my socks on. I could put my socks on, Mommy.
Put your toes on.